What's up, my friend? Welcome to the Finding Direction podcast. My name is Stu Massengill, and I'm here every single week to bring you a passionate guest or message dedicated to helping you find your purpose so that you can live a life full of passion, fulfillment, and happiness. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for hanging out with me, and let's dive in. What's up, my friend? Welcome back to another episode here on Finding Direction. I hope you are having an unbelievable, outstanding, incredible day, and I hope something truly amazing happens to you today. I'm going to send some good energy, some good vibes, some good juju your way. And as we dive into today's episode, I'm going to be sitting down with Satya Lights, who is a multiple disciplinary healing artist. It's a mouthful. And on this episode, what we talk about is how do you build a better relationship with yourself? We talk into how do you start to find your truth? And you're going to get the one piece of advice Satya would go back and give her 16-year-old self that would literally be the piece of advice that would guide her through her entire life. She gives us one at the end, so make sure you stick around for it. It is absolutely packed with some juiciness, some value, some things that I really believe if you take the things she spoke about and we spoke about in this conversation and you apply them to your life, you 100% will start living more in your truth. So enjoy this episode. If you have not yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can hang out with us every single week on this show as we give you content, tools, resources to help you find your purpose and maximize living in it every single day. Enjoy this one, my friend. Here we go. Satya Lights, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
It's such an honor to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as we kick off the episode, I would love for if you could just share with our listener a little bit about just, who's Satya Lights and what do you do?
Mm-hmm. So I actually go with multidisciplinary healing artist. And
Love that.
like over the years, I tried a lot of different things. All of it and none of it at the same time. So right now, the artist is the all-encompassing. So I will go with that today as well.
Love that. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I think would be really, really fun to dive into today is you've had this journey in your life of kind of like coming back to discovering who you are and also going through this process of just like healing yourself from unworthiness, inadequacy. And as I went and did my research on you, you've lived like when I finally connected like your picture and saw your age, it was almost like I almost felt like you should have been older because you have experienced so much in your life. And so I'm curious if we go back to, let's say, 16-year-old Satya, when you initially started exploring basically your who you were, and you did it through plant medicine, you did it through mind altering substances. I would just love if you could take us into sort of this, I'm going to call it your first chapter, but it's not really your first chapter, but like this chapter of your life when you started to explore with all these different types of basically psychological things to discover who you were. And if you could just share a little bit with us about that phase of your life.
So like the psychoactive substances. So it was 16. I started with cannabis. So basically, really, it wasn't the intention of really exploring my consciousness yet. Like so after I started going into it, it was like, oh, there's something here that I am actually diving deep. And unlike a lot of people's stories, my story was not like I did this and then it was just like this great awakening and then like my life entirely changed. It was I actually, after I did my first psilocybin mushroom ceremonial like journey, I was like, I'm never doing this again. This is like creepy. So like I took a long break, going into different healing modalities and Eastern philosophies and, studying yoga, and breath work and meditation, and also like being a big participant of like life in my
Yeah.
earlier ages. So it was like this, who am I here, like it's just like where do I belong? And also
Yeah.
like the story in those chapters were like leaving where I'm from, we're leaving Turkey, moving to California. So it was a lot of movement and questioning and not really knowing what I'm doing.
Yeah. What do you
Yeah.
feel like was the biggest lesson you learned through that first sort of chapter of exploration?
hmm So I think the first like really time that I was like, oh, there's something here
Yeah.
um that I'm like, I get to look, was because I started studying neurolinguistic programming when I
Yeah.
like, or like creating with my thoughts, and I was just like doing visioning and stuff like before
Yeah.
I moved here, before like I was 18 years old, 17 years old, like going into that. I was like, oh, like there's
Huh.
something that I can do with my mind. And I brought myself to California, to a country, like to a city, to a state that I have never been before, like by
Didn't know
chance.
anyone.
Nobody. So like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like so these were all like, like the manufacturing of my mind. And like, although like once I arrived, it was a lot of, like really traumatic experiences, and being in Turkey and really not knowing myself and being a teenager and like deciding that I'm going to leave here, was like I arrived to a place where, oh, I came all the way overseas, and I am not going anywhere. I brought myself with me. So that was the
Mm.
first, like the awakening. And
Yeah.
yeah, like it was that I can say that was like, oh, okay, now I get to do something about this.
Yeah. That's a powerful moment in life, right? It's like you have
Yeah.
this big ideology of I'm going to move to this other country. It's California. Maybe you saw it in like movies. And all of a sudden you arrive and you're like, wait, nothing's really changed when I'm by myself, or like at the core, I'm still with me. Um,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. I was just watching one of your Instagram, videos as I was researching you, and it was all about like falling in love with yourself. And we
Mm.
recently did an episode on the podcast as well that was about having the courage to fall in love with yourself, and that it really is something that, you know, it's a process you have to go through that can be scary, but is massively, massively rewarding. And I'm curious, like, as you started to have that moment where you go, man, like I'm in another country, I'm in another world, basically, but I'm still here with myself. What were some of the things you started to do to like build a better relationship with yourself?
So it wasn't an instant that like I started building a good relationship with myself, and it took me a minute that I to realize that I cannot stand myself.
Yeah.
And like from the first chapter, I because of the first chapter, and like it wasn't, I don't know if I want to go there, but yeah, like it wasn't immediate after I had that awakening.
Yeah.
First, like, oh, how can I run away from myself? How can I, like, because my default was to run for the hills. Like, even coming to
That's why
California
you
was
went
like
to
running,
California.
like
Yeah.
running from what I thought, like, going to support me in my experience,
Yeah.
right? Like, and then now, okay, like, how can I run from this experience? It's like, okay, getting into a lot of alcohol, and like
Mm.
using drugs. And it's like, and then I got to a point where like my guidance system was so loud that I couldn't not listen. Oh, this is not for
Mm.
me. Like, I can't do this. Like,
Yeah.
I can't go this route.
Yeah.
There's something like really pulling me to, like to the other side, and then I found myself in a yoga class. I'm like, what is yoga?
Yeah.
And that was like, okay. So I was pulled into this side of things. And then I had a period of time being in between the worlds, actually. and
Huh.
trying to figure out like how, because I was, like really disciplined, practicing and really having epic breakthroughs, like somatic healings through yoga. And I'm doing this like psychedelic
Dang.
breathwork journeys and meditations, and then going and partying 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
And like these friends don't know about my this life, and this life is like hearing about like my yoga
Yeah.
adventures. Like I'm trying to exist in between. And it is also like the journey of Satya. Like what is Satya? The truth. Like I did not know my truth. Like I was in between, and like going back and forth for a bit.
Yeah.
And that was also really like part of my suffering, because um the amount of not loving myself was so big that knowing that this bit, like if I get a bit lost, like like it's going to be, I'm not going to feel this pain of being myself.
Hmm.
So that was like constantly pulling. So it was the spiral of my healing journey, like going in, like going into my practices and coming back here, going into my practices. And I know so many people having this experience, and there's a lot of shame in this experience also,
Huh.
because like you can't. I used to smoke cigarettes after my yoga, and I would hide it, like,
Yeah.
so it's like, it's shameful. How can you be a yogi and like smoke cigarettes? Like, and,
Yeah.
and it can be okay with so many people, but in my mind, in my experience, it was not okay for me. So I'm not judging anybody, but it was like my judgment of myself. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. So it's almost like you had a like two different blueprints of what you wanted your life to be like and what your life was supposed to look like.
So it's like
Because
I would say the blueprint of this one was not like, that it's really guiding me back to this route. Actually, every time I
yeah,
would go there, oh, okay, like this is the true one. Every time I
right.
would go in, like this is the true. So like the blueprint has been the blueprint, yet for me to get it took
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, you would kind of stroll away and
Yeah.
all of a sudden they would bring you back and you'd
Yeah,
you'd
like
wander a
come
little
on.
bit and it would come
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah.
memes like with the higher self, oh, she's doing it again. Like my higher self and my guides would be like, okay,
Yeah.
like here, this way, maybe.
Yeah. That's so cool. And
Yeah.
so an interesting part as you went through this was you kind of mentioned earlier, but it's like you went and you started doing stuff with NLP and breath work and hypnotherapy and like all these different things. And I'm curious what had you dive so deep into this like self-discovery? Because I think, sometimes we can go through life and we go, man, maybe I don't love myself and whatever. But it takes a different type of person to say, like, I don't like this, and I'm gonna take massive action to get clear on like, how do I fall in love with myself? How do I, love my life? How do I live my truth and find my truth? And you took such like massive action, right? You did all these different things. And I'm curious, what pulled you to say, I'm going to go explore all these different things? And what were some of the biggest learnings you had from exploring such a multitude of different types of work?
Hmm. Hmm. So once, our boxes expand, we can't really go back to who we once were, like to a smaller box.
Yeah.
So the consciousness is like that. So like as I have the information, I was operating most of my life until very recently, um like here, like like intellectually I get the whole point. So like that's how it started, like mentally, like really strong mind. Like if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something. So once I started, like had all the evidence that I can create with my mind.
Yeah.
I have all the evidence. So like no having this evidence and going through and having this practices like emotional a lot, like yoga really supported me to go through like really epic somatic healings. Breath work
Yeah.
took me to the most amazing psychedelic journeys without even using any plant medicines, and
Hmm.
plant medicines took me to like amazing trips and
Yeah.
journeys of like self-discovery and consciousness and like the mystic world and the mind, like
Yeah.
whatever is in the subconscious mind. So like once I know these things, and once I was tapping into the frequency of the heart, like, through the practice, like I can't like just sit down and say, oh, this is, like I'm going to settle for the mediocre. Like I
Yeah.
was waking up like every morning I had a practice and still do, like that's how
Yeah.
like I showed up basically.
Yeah.
And knowing that, this work takes courage, yes, and commitment, and you get to show up. But it's like there's this feeling that that we're all like in like trying to feel the feeling, we're all chasing the feeling,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I know that feeling, and it is here, so why don't I do that instead of like go into the stories of all the stories that I was telling myself,
Yeah.
which was not
Well,
really productive stories, like and I committed to change my story. And it's like,
mm,
still to this day, like I was like last week sitting in 10 hours of meditations a day, like going into the to in
wow.
the journey of becoming nobody. We go through these levels of like dissolve, like dissolving the relationships and who we know, like the identity, like and when it comes to the identity and the programming and what we believe we are and who we think
Yeah.
we are, it's just like that ego. It's like, like it's like this holding on to release that. It takes time and energy, and it's a constant journey. I cannot come to you and say, Stu, like, oh, I'm done. Like, I know now,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is it. This is how you do it. Yeah, there's a path. Like I have been paving the path of like, like walking this path of like, nobody walked it before me, like through my bloodline or like people
Right.
around me. Like I don't have many people who are super, I didn't have, like now, yes, like we're growing, there's a larger community, and like if there's a lot more people around like that I can have conversations with and
Yeah.
walk with and have accountability. Yet in when I first started, this wasn't there. So I was just like, oh, like I'm falling. And then I'm like, okay, come on, Satya, like you can do
Yeah.
it. Like I was like my best own cheerleader. And through that relationship, um, like my relationship with myself started getting softer and gentler and, more loving. So
Yeah.
with the concept of understanding the reparenting. So,
Yeah. And I love how you said you began to change your story. And I think
mhm,
that's such a powerful thing. It's like we all have a story about who we believe we are, right? And sometimes those stories can be not the most powerful and enriching stories. They can be stories that kind of don't make us feel super good about ourselves, right? But
mhm,
it's so interesting. It's like if you can change the story and the narrative of who you believe you are in your life, everything in your life begins to change. Because one of the things my mentor once told me is he said, the strongest force we have as a human being is to live in alignment with who we believe we are. So
mhm,
if we believe that we're someone that doesn't deserve love, that, is never good enough, then we're going to find ways to live in alignment with that because that's who we believe we are. That's the strongest force that we want to live in our truth. And if we
mhm,
believe that story is our truth, we're going to do that. But if we can change our story to say, I'm someone who's love and light and I give to others and I love myself in every aspect of my life. And maybe I'm perfectly flawed and that's okay, but I love myself for that. And if that's our story, everything in our life changes. And so I'd be curious if you'd be open to sharing, what would you say was the old story that you had and what's the story that you live in your life today?
mm. Thank you. Um, so in my experience, it was so easy, like it was so challenging for me to be myself, whatever that meant. Like
Yeah.
I didn't even understand that concept. Yet it was so easy to be everything else. So I was like, okay, like I'm
Huh.
gonna go learn this and like my um even like going into this curiosity and going into all these places, or even like stemming from a shadow, and like our shadow turns into our gift. So my shadow of not loving myself and not, I couldn't stand myself. And like I didn't know that
Yeah.
then, like I can't say
Right.
that like this was the like, but like from in retrospect, like with all the work that I have done, with the vantage point that I had, oh my God, all these things that I was doing, So like it was all the masks, all the ways in which that I tried to be something else,
Yeah.
except like other than, like myself. And I didn't know what myself meant then,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
also. But also like all the stories that I have been carrying, even the ancestral ones, and not being really connected to the roots and where I'm coming from, and having the shame and thinking that if I am myself, or like telling my truth, that's not going to be accepted in this setting.
Right.
And also, like it was easy to leave the life behind and come here and act like something that I'm not,
Yeah.
so like even in that, there was like a lot of like, in that moment I have so much compassion for that, like young woman, yet really coming into like, okay, like it's like really asking the question of like, what is my medicine? Who is this woman? Like, how long are you going to, because if we tell a story long enough, and if this story is not the truth, we're going to start believing into our own lies.
Yeah.
So it becomes like the entire life becomes this like thing that you make up, like you made up in your head. And like even the memories, like there are studies like we the memories are not like how we remember. We are just making stuff up and like believing in those
Yeah.
like make up stuff, right?
Yeah.
So um in my experience, I made up all these stuff, like, and like through a very, very deeply traumatized nervous system, the emotions and all the stuff that I couldn't handle within myself, within my being. um there was a whole story, and then and I was like, okay, like what is the truth of this? And
Yeah.
when Satya, like, so I also have a name changing
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
When Satya came into like as an offering in a ceremony, like maybe you get to change your name. So I'm like, Satya is truth, like in subconsciously, not consciously. I'm not like, when I'm talking about the truth, I'm not going around and telling lies to people, but it's like the inner, like, well, how I built my story within
Yeah.
myself and what I believe. I'm like talking about these psychological like things, and on top of the traumas that I didn't know I existed. So in my experience, there were things there are things in my experience I don't remember that hurt me a lot. So like not knowing, and like our subconscious mind, we don't know 95%
Right.
of the like, but so, and few things showing themselves, oh, I built my entire life because this pain was here, and not to feel this pain because it was not safe to be me. So once I understood that concept, oh, okay,
Yeah.
how can I create safety within myself to this little girl? How can I learn to hold myself in this experience
Mm.
so that I can remember who I am? Because that is returning to the innocence, right?
Yeah.
So that is the journey that we're all on. That is the ultimate journey of loving ourselves, remembering who we are. So that is the journey of Satya. And
So
that,
amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's a beautiful thing too. It sounds like, if there was a magic wand that existed and we could, go tap people with it and say, this is your truth, that would be really, really cool. But I think the truth is that it's a process, right? It's
Mm,
like, they say anything worthwhile in life takes time.
mhm,
And, getting to know yourself, coming back to who you truly are, it takes time, right? It
mhm,
takes, for you, all those different things that you explored, you tried, like one thing I that stands out to me when I see the journey of your life is it's a life that is a journey of exploring yourself through all these different things, which has allowed you to come to the true sense of who you are. And it's allowed you to shine your light beautifully today.
Thank you.
And I think for the person listening, it's to ask yourself, like, how can you dive into the journey of exploration in your own life? Whether it's following an energy that's pulling you, whether it's, maybe like your own journey where you wandered off a little bit and all of a sudden this thing saying like, no, stop wandering, come back this way. But I think it's in that exploration that does take time that we can come back to this true sense. And the beautiful part too is when it takes time and you finally have that moment, like you have yourself, where you're like, wow, this is my truth. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. You are so much more grounded and confident in that because you've spent the time, the effort, the energy, all of that work to get to this version of yourself. And so it's like, it takes time. It's work. You go through a lot of stuff, but then when you find it, it's one of the most beautiful things that you can have in your life.
Yeah, it's almost like, like finding the diamond in the mud, and also like now, okay, we found it. And then the entire rest of the journey is like really polishing it and cleaning it. And, like, okay, so it's there. It's like we are all carrying that jewel within ourselves. And, like if the listener, are here, like whoever is here, they are on a certain journey, right? They are like, like asking these questions. And like, I acknowledge all of you for asking all these questions. And I will say there's no one way, or the one size fits all experience, right? There's 8 billion people living on this planet, 8 billion different fingerprints. So like, it's like we're all unique. So there are, like, yes, like people who are paving the way and paved the way, like like great masters. And so it's like really asking the question and learning to listen what because the universe is like working so perfectly that like the breadcrumbs, like, like you can't miss it. And if you miss it, there's like, if you're constantly asking the question, there's going to be another opportunity for you to see that. So we ask a question because it's a unique journey. No one, like, can walk the path of Satya, and I can't walk the path of Stu because, but, maybe we had parallel experiences. Who knew, So really knowing that whatever is, like is supposed to unfold in our journeys, like having that trust, like cultivating that trust, having that, like cultivating that relationship within ourselves, like, and with the universe, or, like that God, higher power, like whatever people want to call that. And really cultivating that relationship and that trust. And, like the journey of awakening, especially in this day and age, it's, with the energies that are really we are bombarded with, it is really challenging. And it like if and I mean, like we signed up for this, right? Like we signed up for these experiences, in my opinion. So these experiences are, even though in the moment of like, when we're experiencing, they may look really challenging and it is happening to us, like we're the victims of it. Like if we can empower ourselves a bit, in that moment, and remember, or, like train ourselves to remember, because it's like, tiny little bits of training here and there, remembering or doing certain exercises, because this work is not done. One of my teachers, Baba Ramdas, like he says, this work is done in the privacy of your own heart. Like everything moment to moment that we do,
that's beautiful,
counts. That makes the difference. So, like me waking up in the morning at 5 a.m., meditating and doing my yoga, and then doing my, like I like journals and journals and journals, like that deep programming with the tools that I have in any given moment, I showed up for all of it. So,
Yeah.
and this is not everybody's journey also. And whatever
Yeah.
feels right for each person, it's just like being curious.
Yeah.
Oh,
So let me,
what would
so
happen, like if I choose this?
yeah. So let me ask you this. So, one of the things you mentioned a few times, and love that you mentioned this. I'm a huge believer in this, is like questions, right? And
Mhm.
there's huge power in questions. It determines where we encourage our mind to go explore. And so what would you say were a few questions that you asked yourself, or what are a few questions that maybe even our listener could ask themselves as they come back to like finding their truth and living in that?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
do you remember, were there questions you started to ask yourself that went, oh, yeah, this makes me go somewhere?
Mhm. Hmm. I mean, I don't remember those questions. Like, I mean, I feel like um I like this idea of being the scientist of our lives. So, like when you're a scientist, and this is Dr. Joe Dispenza says, and I'm,
Uh-huh.
like his longtime student,
Yeah.
like being the scientist of our lives, like constantly asking questions. And if we are asking questions, there's different, in the realm of infinite possibility, there's infinite
Yeah.
answers to that. So what I can recommend is like, okay, whatever is like, so there's no A to B, like, start here. This is the manual of life, So whatever is happening in the real time, in the present moment, whatever the challenge is, okay,
Yeah.
so we can ask, okay, how can I see this from a different perspective? Like, what would be in this? Like, is there a silver lining? Maybe there's not.
Yeah.
Like, can I see this? Or, like, can I see this in the perspective of, like miracles? Like, if, like, or is it gonna teach me something? Is it teaching me something at this point? Maybe,
Yeah.
and, like, we may not get the answers immediately. And it can sound like, what? Like, my like father is having a like a stage 4 cancer. What are you talking about? Like, some things are, when
Yeah.
we ask, like in the face of this kind of very challenging experiences, these questions may look like, what are you talking about? you know Yet, that's at the on the other side of the experience, the grief and processing our sadness, anger, or shame, whatever that may be, for each
Yeah.
lesson. Oh, there shines a little spark. And no one can take that experience away from you. That becomes the wisdom of
Yeah.
that we carry, And the
Yeah.
question would be like, how can I cultivate more trust to life, to myself?
Mm.
What does trust mean? So when I am doing work with my community, um, I invite them. The invitation is always like really redefining all the structures that we believed in the past. Okay, what is surrender? Or what is trust? Or what is abundance? What is freedom? Because
Yeah.
when we say truth is like moment to moment experience. So there's, but we are pieces, we are carriers, of puzzles of, puzzle pieces of the truth we're
Yeah.
carrying. And nobody has the ultimate truth. And the more we learn, the more we open up, like we recognize how grand this plan and this experience is. So
Yeah.
really, um like opening spaces, how can I like redefine this for myself with this version of me? Because like really changing the mind requires, okay, what is this freedom mean for me? Like,
Yeah.
because they gave me a definition of freedom years ago, so I'm building my life on that like definition. So can I empower myself to define it for myself so that I can take the reins? Oh, like, this is my definition of freedom, and then this is how I'm going to live my life. So what are
Yeah.
my values, and can I redefine them? So these may be the questions, like really fundamental questions to like start building our lives and empowering ourselves from within,
Yeah.
for
True.
for for having like really truthful experiences. in the
Yeah.
moment, whatever that may be, like whatever I believe today, I have the right to change my mind tomorrow. Like it's my truth.
For real. And one other question I think to throw in there too, to go back to what we spoke about earlier, just is like, who do I want to become? Right. I think a lot of the time we're just drifting, we're floating, and we may not get clear on like, who do I want to be? And I think if we can ask ourselves and sit with that question, and maybe it's not perfect, but we say, okay, well, I want to be someone who's happy. That gives us so much more clarity than, I don't know what the heck's going to happen next. Right. So
Yeah.
I love the questions you asked. And I think also another powerful one. And one other question I'd have for you, and then we'll, start to wrap up here, is if you could go back to your 16-year-old self, Satya, you moved to LA, and you could give her a piece of advice as she would go through the next phase of her journey that eventually brings her to where you are today, what's a piece of advice you'd go back to 16-year-old Satya and give her?
I would say trust yourself. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Simple and powerful.
It is very powerful. And, like when I, go back like the entire timeline, it's
Yeah.
like really constantly doubting, questioning. Yet, even though I didn't know how to trust myself, I ended up
Yeah.
here, which I think good job.
Yeah. Kudos. Truly.
And uh yeah, like if I knew how to trust myself, it could in the moment, like it could really ease the suffering tiny bit more. But yeah, I'm here now and I
Yeah.
wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah. It worked out. So cool. So if people want to continue to hang out with you, Satya, and just continue to be part of the light that you spread to the world, where's the
Okay.
best place for them to find you, hang out with you, and all that goodness?
Thank you. So I am very present on Instagram world, and it's Satya Lights at Satya Lights. And then they can if they choose to dive into the world and the community of Satya Lights through signing up to the whole email thing. And then I do have group offerings and one-on-one offerings and like beautiful meditation experiences and whatnot. So if they choose to.
So cool. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you for sharing that. And last question I have for you. It's a question we ask for all of our guests because we want to help people find direction, but we really do believe in doing it through some sort of action, whether that's, mental action or physical action. Is the question I would ask you is what is the person that's listening to this right now could do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life? And specifically, what's one thing that they could do in the next 24 to 48 hours?
Finding directions. That's a really good question. I would say and this is they can take action on this to really cultivating a relationship with their higher self. And like, what does that mean? And like we can ask direct questions, like that is it, like our direct communication channel. So instead of like asking a third party, like if we cultivate that relationship with our higher self, we can have more clarity as far as the direction, and ask questions. And I recommend asking, simpler questions while in the process of cultivating this relationship. And then, like moving forward over the time of this relationship, you can start asking really big questions and just start trusting that.
Amazing. 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 I love it. And absolutely someone who's listening to this can take action on literally in the next 30 minutes. So thank you so much for being here, Satya. It's been an absolute pleasure to dive through your life and just thank you so much for sharing everything and sharing part of your life with us. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Blessings.
Absolutely. Congratulations, my friend, on crushing it through another episode here on Finding Direction. Make sure you give yourself a pat on the back, a round of applause, because you are one of the few who is not willing to settle for less than a life that lights up your soul, and that is absolutely something worth celebrating. So congratulations on crushing it through another episode, and I hope you take some of those things we talked about, Satya, myself, and make sure you go apply them in your life, and especially the last piece we talked about, get in touch with that higher self. Build a relationship with it, and things in your life will begin to transform. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be so grateful if you would go to the iTunes store and leave us a review. If you're on Spotify, you can hit a rating there, but let us know what you like, what you want more of, and that's how we make this show better for you, and also truthfully, how we get this show in front of more people so that we can make a bigger impact in this world. So if you take a second to do that, I would be so grateful. And other than that, I hope you have a wonderful, incredible, outstanding day, as always, and I hope you make today truly magical. If you want to continue to hang out, don't feel like you need to go anywhere, I have another episode coming up right after this, and you are more than welcome to hang out with me there. So have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.